Chris Taylor, who's the GM of Uber Chicago, on the line. Chris, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you guys for having me.
Hey, thanks for being on the show. Uber now in Rockford.
It is. We're really excited about it.
Looking at your press release, excited to roll into 6 new cities. Where are we?
That is correct. Yeah, we on Sunday with Governor Rauner, we launched Rockford, Champaign, Urbana, Bloomington, Normal, and Aurora. So we're really excited to be bringing the service to some new areas.
Now, we talked previously when some of the ride-sharing legislation was pending down in Springfield. You mentioned you'd like to expand. Now it's happened. We were also discussing earlier in the program the logistics of this. It's not quite like a brick-and-mortar type business expanding where you got to find space and rental agreements and such. I'm sure it's not the easiest process, but less complicated than others. What's it like to try to open up Uber in these cities?
Yeah, so opening up a new market for us is about basically 2 things. It's about building up demand and building up supply. And when we say supply, we mean, drivers who want to partner with us and then go provide those people in the city rides. So we work on marketing and we work on recruiting people who want to partner and drive. And then when that's ready, we go back into our systems and our tools, and we draw the proper fences over a city in the mapping tools we use, and then we enable the service.
And how do you find out, how do you go about the recruitment aspect of new drivers? They find out, of course, that you're making plans to come into our area. They get in touch with you, say, hey, I want to take part, I want to drive. How does that work?
Yeah, so we do advertising on job boards and a lot of online areas. People tend to find us through that. And then, honestly, our best way of communication is actually after we launch, it's word of mouth. Drivers will tell their friends, they'll say, hey, I'm doing this, I like it, and that's really the best place it spreads.
Chris Taylor's with us, Uber General Manager. It's Riley and Scott here on WROK. They're here in Rockford. What was it about the city of Rockford that appealed to Uber? I know our mayor, Larry Morrissey's been a pretty big proponent of the system.
It's a couple things. One, we think Rockford's a great city. We think that, the size and type of city that Rockford is and the kind of the progressive attitude it's had towards tech companies in terms of partnering and trying to create opportunities has been a really positive example, and that is Mayor Morrissey's leadership. So there's that, and it's the fact that, we've launched in all types of markets, and Uber is not just for a Chicago or San Francisco. It's for places like El Paso and Amarillo or West Lafayette, Indiana. We see success in a very wide range of market sizes, and we're excited that the people of Rockford now have the chance too.
Chris Taylor's the GM of Uber, spending a little time with us. Uber is now here in Rockford, and you have to be gratified, I know you are, at the response that Uber has gotten from people. It's one of those things I remember, it's almost like, hey, that really cool restaurant that's everywhere else in the country is finally coming here.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm really happy about it. I think we've heard great reactions, and part of it is just that it's, I like to think of it as a better mousetrap. Like we've come up with something that's really positive, that improves people's lives, and especially on a cold morning like this morning, if you need to ride, you want to get somewhere, it's really affordable and it's really reliable.
Chris, walk us through the process, please. You download the app on your mobile device, your smartphone, and you need a ride. So what happens from there?
Yeah, so you have to input your information. And you just sign up like you would for any type of app or website. We do need a credit card, and the reason for that is that it creates one of the great features of the app, which is the fact that it is very seamless and cashless. So when you get a ride, you hit the request button. So say you input your credit card and register. Then all you have to do is fire up the app. You open it, you see where you are on a map, and you press request. And what happens then is we pair you with a driver who's wants to give you a ride, and before they show up, you see a picture of their face, you see what type of car they're driving, including their name and their license plate number, so you know exactly who that person is before you get in that car. And when you take that ride and you hop out at the end, we automatically bill your credit card, There's no need to fumble with any cash. You just hop right out, close the door, and we email a receipt right to you. And so that's one of the nicest features that actually also contributes to safety, because you don't have a driver or a rider fumbling with a lot of cash.
And the drivers themselves, your drivers, Uber drivers, pass the most rigorous background check in the industry. And as you mentioned, it's a transparent process, too. You know who's picking you up before they arrive, and you can see ratings and reviews that other Uber users have left for that particular driver.
That's exactly right. So the feedback system creates a very positive incentive for people to behave well, and it also allows us to track and monitor and prevent bad actors from using the system. And we do our best upfront to prevent that anyway with the background checks. We go back 7 years at a local county level, a state level, all state level, so multi-state, federal, and then registered sex offender and motor vehicle history. So we do take safety very seriously, and we're incredibly happy that we take the steps to make sure the public is safe.
And you also, is it 3 times the amount of insurance that you would normally see in a cab?
In Chicago, it's 3 times. I actually don't know exactly the taxi insurance requirements in Rockford, but most cities, we are anywhere from 3 to 20. In Washington, D.C., for example, taxis are only required to have $50,000 of insurance, and Uber carries $1 million. So we're 20 times the insurance requirement in Washington, D.C., which is quite interesting.
Chris Taylor with us, Uber General Manager. It's Riley and Scott here on WROK. Is it a guarantee that there is a driver for you when you need one, or what? Well, I'm sure you track. What's the percentage basis on which someone who needs a driver gets a driver?
So we, given that we're a tech company, we have access to a lot of great data. And so we'll look at a market and we'll say, hey, in Rockford, this morning we had, it's brand new. It's only been up for 3 days. But say we had, just a couple drivers who went online, and we saw that we had 20 requests for a ride, and we weren't able to fulfill all of those. Well, that's not good business for us, and that's not a good experience for those riders. So we'll look at that data, and then we go out and we proactively recruit to make sure more people are signed up to drive, so we can make sure we get those rides fulfilled.
And last time you were with us, I had mentioned to you, I've got a friend who travels extensively. And when I first became aware of Uber, it wasn't here in Rockford, and I didn't have much use for it. But I thought, well, this guy travels all the time. So I, forwarded along to him the link for the app. First thing he says to me, all right, what's this going to cost me? I said, well, why don't you go through it and see if it might be something you like. Well, I hear back from him a couple of weeks later. He'd already used Uber like 5 or 6 times and just thought that this was one of the coolest things and the easiest things that he could ever do.
That's one of the most consistent things we hear. People love that the app works everywhere, and they love how simple it is. So say you travel to Jakarta in Indonesia. You don't have to deal with local currency. You don't have to deal with finding and flagging down a car in an area where you don't even know what the heck it's going to look like. We like to think of it now in Illinois as from Rockford to Rio, from Champaign to Copenhagen. Wherever you're going, you're covered.
And Uber, being a kind of a nimble company, can adjust to supply and demand, as you said. Here in Rockford, the big 4th of July fireworks celebration, and if people want more rides to and from downtown for that, you can adjust. For example, a bunch of cab drivers go on strike in a middle of the morning drive in Chicago. You, I'm sure, could grab more Uber drivers, say, yesterday morning to help out, right?
That's exactly it. We do what we can. We really want to make sure that everybody who needs a ride gets one, because that's how our business works. We don't, the taxi industry makes money typically in a very different way, and they don't necessarily, at least in Chicago, always care how many rides get completed, because the owners make the money off of a driver paying the owner a lease. We don't do that. We only get paid when a ride gets completed and a customer gets to go where they want to go. So we want to maximize the number of trips.
And speaking of those trips, Chris, for somebody who's interested in being an Uber driver, what sort of time commitment is involved?
So there's 0 time commitment. That's actually the most powerful thing about it for drivers, is that you get to drive whenever you want. You can sign up, and you can be someone who is a parent who just dropped their kids off at school. maybe you drive for a couple hours while you have some downtime. Or you can be someone who has another job, and you do this on nights and weekends to earn a little bit of extra cash because maybe you have some student loans you want to pay off, or maybe you know, for whatever the reason might be. So the flexibility is actually the greatest part.
And in Chicago last year, $18.6 million earned by Chicagoans on the Uber platform. That's a bit of an economic impact, and I'm sure you could say how much of that would go to taxis or buses, but there has to be a segment of that population that who would not be using a ride service like this if not for Uber existing.
Well, and actually, I'm going to tell you that number is actually quite a bit bigger. In Chicago, we estimated the economic impact was actually add a zero to that. It's basically 180 to 190 million. Dollars of economic impact, and that impact is assessed through driver earnings, the ability of people to take rides that they couldn't otherwise take, which means they're going to stores and spending money that they wouldn't have. So the impact is massive, and it's not about us versus taxi or anything like that. It's really about there are a lot of people who choose not to drive themselves or actually go out when they wouldn't have because they think about it in a different way.
Well, it's time for you to think about it a different way here in Rockford. There's a new way to get around. It's called Uber. Download the app. Works on your iPhone, works on your Android device. You can go to the website and learn a whole lot more. Chris, thanks for taking time out of your morning for us, and we're glad to have you here.
I'm very excited, and I look forward to being around.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.